Hello everyone, I'm Jonathan Little for PokerNews.com, and today we have another hand from the 2019 World Series of Poker main event that I played. I do not know what's going to happen in this hand, but let's go ahead and take a look. You may say, you can't remember the hands that you played in the main event of the World Series? No, I cannot. It may come to me in the middle of the hand or something if it gets insane, but you're going to find that when you play a lot of poker, all the hands blend together after a while, and it's a big jumble in my head. So let's take a look at this hand. So we are playing 83 big blinds deep at 1,500, 3,000 blinds, so we're relatively deep into the tournament. Second position raises 7,500, and we have king, queen offsuit in the hijack seat. This is a situation where you can either 3-bet or call. I think either play is fine. With the offsuit big cards, I usually just 3-bet across the board as opposed to calling. And that's just because the suited hands play a little bit better than the offsuit hands post-flop. So I don't mind if I pick this up pre-flop. And if the opponent does call, I can still make top pairs, and usually that's decent enough. Really, we're just using the big card hands like ace-jack offsuit, ace-10 offsuit, king-queen offsuit, king-jack offsuit as big blocker hands because they make it much more difficult for the opponent to have a premium hand pre-flop, right? And if you never 3-bet bluff, well, it makes your opponent's life easy when you actually do 3-bet. So we do 3-bet this time. So opponent made it 7,500. I make it about 3 times that, which I think is fine and nice. Opponent calls. I have no reads on this opponent apparently. He checks. Flop comes 8, 4, 3, 2 diamonds. He checks. And this is a situation where I want to be betting frequently and usually in a small or medium size. The board is very uncoordinated. It does not connect with either of us well at all. And if the opponent does not have a pair, they're going to be put in a pretty difficult spot immediately. And even with a hand like ace-king, ace-queen, ace-jack, yeah, they may call a flop bet, but we will be able to continue betting on some turns and pick up the pot if we feel inclined. This is definitely a spot where in live poker I am paying a lot of attention to what my opponent is doing. Some players will be like intently staring you down as if they are not folding. They are trying to get a read on you and figure out what's going on. Whereas other people are like clearly done with the hand. So if they're clearly done with the hand, I'm definitely betting. If they are trying to find out what's going on, I'm not going to try to barrel my opponent off a hand like pocket jacks. It's not a good idea. So you can definitely go either way. Here I do decide to make a small continuation bet. And with no reads, this is just what I would do with my whole range on this board. Because neither player connects very well at all, which means the 3-better usually has a bit of an advantage. So he checks. I bet 20,000 into 47. I'm going to get called a lot when I bet 20 into 47. And you may say, well, if you're going to get called a lot, why even bluff? Well, because we have the ability to continue bluffing on the turn, right? It's not as if I'm going to just check and then fold every single time when he calls my flop bets. So this is certainly a situation to stick around. So it's certainly a situation where the opponent's going to stick around, which allows me to continue bluffing. Only finished half the thought there, sorry. All right, turn is the 3 of hearts and the opponent checks. So now this is decision time, where I can either bet the turn and bet the river to try to get my opponent off of stuff like jacks or, more importantly, ace high, or I can just check and concede. And in this scenario, this board is just like all blanks, right? Because unless the opponent had pocket 8s, pocket 4s, or pocket 3s, and there's only 7 combinations of those total, they have a marginal hand that is behind my strong value range, which are aces, kings, and queens, right? So I definitely do want to keep bluffing with some hands in this scenario. Obviously, diamonds are great hands to bluff. If I did have a hand like jack 9 of diamonds, queen 10 of diamonds, king 10 of diamonds, those are all great hands to keep bluffing. Maybe like ace 5 of diamonds, right? Those are all fine to keep bluffing, because they lack showdown value, but they have plenty of equity. But notice that's only something like 5 to 10 combinations of flush draws, depending on how I structure my range. But I just told you I have 12 aces, or 6 aces, 6 kings. They definitely want a value bet. Probably 6 queens and 6 jacks. So that's 24 value hands, which means I get to come up with about 24 combinations of bluffs in this situation, and maybe even more if I think my opponent's going to overfold on the turn plus the river. So if I only have 5 to 10 flush draw combinations here, don't forget I may also have ace 3 suited, so I have 2 nut hands there every once in a while. If I have 5 to 10 flush draw combinations, depending on my strategy, I get to have something like 15 to 20 big card bluffs. And I want to pick the big card bluffs that lack showdown value. So that's going to be hands like Queen Jack, almost certainly, King Jack, and Queen Jack. Notice Ace 10 perhaps has a little bit of showdown value. Ace Jack has a little bit of showdown value. You typically want to start at the bottom and work your way up in terms of your bluff hands, right? Like Jack 10. I mean, I'm not going to 3-bet Jack 10 pre-flop, but if I did have Jack 10, that just is never winning at showdown, right? So then we would want to bluff Jack 10 if I had it, but I don't have it. Next, Queen Jack. Like I said, I would consider 3-betting Queen Jack sometimes. So definitely bluff that one, although I may not even have that hand pre-flop. So now we're looking at King Jack and King Queen, which is where we are. So I could certainly see myself bluffing here. If I do bluff the turn, probably in on the river. And you may say, do you really want to be bluffing off your stack in the World Series of Poker main event? Well, I do them the rest of my range is aces, kings, and queens, and ace 3 suited, right? It's important to have some bluffs every once in a while. Notice I do bet 40,000 into 87. This is essentially setting up a river jam. Notice if I bet 40 into 87 and the opponent calls, the pot will go up to 160. I'll have 170 left, and that'll allow for a river shove. That said, I may not actually make the river shove. I may make more of like a 120K bet, leaving 40K behind, or 50K behind. And you may say, why do you care about leaving 50K behind? Well, it turns out whenever you leave yourself even a tiny bit of chips, you will run it up every once in a while, and that is highly valuable. So opponent does call. All right, buckle up. But then the river's a king. River king. All right, opponent checks. So now, funny enough, I went from the idea of I want to bluff this river to now I want to value bet this river. Or should I value bet this river, right? Clearly I have a lot of showdown value. If I thought the opponent was like overly tricky and would ever check raise me as a bluff, I would definitely just check behind here. Well, you may say, should you just jam for value? And the problem with this is that I'm not entirely sure the opponent will call. I don't think the opponent will call a jam with a hand like pocket jacks when the river comes a king. But the opponent may call a 70,000 bet with pocket jacks, right? So I think my main choices now become either bet 70K or check. And I do think I have the best hand here almost every time, unless the opponent was slow playing exactly 8s, 3s, and 2s. I'm sorry, 8s, 4s, and 3s for flop full house or flop sets. I have the best hand here most of the time. I mean, the opponent, I guess, could have ace king, but if he has ace king, he checks the river and I bet 70K, he should just call, right? Because I could easily have aces and pocket kings, and I would not value bet queens, jacks, or 10s here. So if he does have ace king, he should probably just call. With pocket aces, he should probably just call too, because now kings got there, right? That said, if I am folding like ace king to a river jam, maybe I just don't have ace king here very often anyway, so I'm no longer discussing it. But if I did have ace king and I value bet the river for 100 or for 70, and he jammed me, I guess it's still probably just a fold. It's a pretty tough spot. Really depends on how many bluffs we have, right? Because in this situation, if I have like queen jack as a bluff, all let's say 12 combinations of them, and I'm only value betting 6 combinations of aces, 3 ace kings, 2 ace 3s. It's not a whole lot of value hands, right? So I very easily could be over bluffing the river. And when you're over bluffing the river, if your opponent is a good strong player, you want to make sure you're defending at or near the minimum defense frequency when they raise you. In which case ace king is probably just a call, which means king queen is probably just a call if they do jam. But in this scenario, I like a 70-ish K bet. I go 78K on the river, and I think this is probably just a tiny bit too big. I know I'm only betting an extra like 2 big blinds on top of 70, but I think as you start betting closer to like 75 or 80 or 90, then it may start making the opponent fold out some of the hands we want to get called by. So I think this is something I've been doing in general, is I've usually been lowering some bets while raising others, usually depending on either just straight up balance or based on how I expect the opponent to proceed. It is worth mentioning I discussed minimum defense frequency when we bet and get raised. when I do bet and get raised, I should probably not be defending at minimum defense frequency because let's get real, no one's check raise bluffing on the river here. They're just not doing it. So anyway, I go for 78K. I think it's a fine value bet. And I get jammed on. Remember how I mentioned about how hands come back to me about halfway through this hand? Started having nightmares about this hand. I get check raised all in on the river. And, well, I just told you no one's check raise bluffing. So the problem is that shouldn't the opponent be worried about the fact that I could just have pocket kings? I remember thinking about this hand, like, what in the world is the opponent really raising with? Because I really just don't think he should be jamming aces here. It's close, but, like, I think aces probably shouldn't jam. So really he should only jam full houses, which means he had to open with 4s or 3s under the gun, which a lot of people don't, under the gun +1, which a lot of people don't even do. He had to then call the 3-bet, which a lot of people don't do. Pocket 8s is the only hand that makes logical sense in my mind, or pocket kings, but there's only one of those, right? So he has a whopping 4 combinations of logical hands. And there are a whole lot of potential bluffs, right? Notice all the busted flush draws that could jam. Not exactly sure what's going on here. Opponent could have like 6-5 suited. But like I said, people just don't bluff in these scenarios. And for that reason, I think I need to fold. I think we get to value bet thin with the idea that if I do get jammed, I'm going to fold. And, you know, this may result in everyone check raising me all in the World Series of Poker main event next year. Hopefully that doesn't happen. But if it does, I suppose I'll deal with it when it comes. So anyway, I do like the fold. Could I have played this hand differently? Well, I could have just given up on the turn, right? But I do think once I get the king on the river, I do think value betting is probably right. And this time, it doesn't work out. Or maybe it did. For all I know, maybe the king actually saved me my tournament, because if the river came a blank, or any card really, I'm going to be jamming all in on the river, and for all I know, maybe the opponent's just sitting here with 8s full, and I would have lost my tournament. So instead of going broke, we're left with 31 big blinds, and with 31 big blinds, we at least have the opportunity to spin it up. So that's what we have for today. I hope you enjoyed this video for PokerNews.com. If you did, click like, click subscribe, and share it with your friends. Good luck in your games. Have fun. Be careful bluffing. And I'll talk to you next time.